The crystal chandeliers of the Riverview Grand Hotel's main dining room sparkled overhead as my mother-in-law, Eleanor Barrett, dropped her bombshell announcement. The weekly family dinner, usually a tense affair, had just become a declaration of war. The board voted this morning, Eleanor continued, dabbing her lips with a monogrammed napkin. As majority shareholder, I'm taking direct control of hotel operations. Sarah, dear, you'll need to clear out your office by tomorrow. My husband Thomas shifted uncomfortably beside me but remained silent. Typical. He'd probably known about this coup for weeks. I'm Sarah Barrett, and until approximately 2 minutes ago, I was the general manager of the Riverview Grand, Miami's most prestigious boutique hotel. 6 years ago, I transformed it from a struggling family business into a 5-star destination. But according to my mother-in-law, none of that mattered because I would always be the girl from the housekeeping staff who got lucky. The paperwork has already been filed, Eleanor added, clearly enjoying herself. The board agreed that the hotel needs experienced leadership. Experienced leadership. I kept my voice calm, remembering the hidden camera in my favorite orchid arrangement, the one that had been recording this whole dinner. Like when you managed it in 2017, before the bankruptcy. Eleanor's perfectly lined lips tightened. That was a temporary setback due to market conditions. Really? Not because you spent the renovation budget on your yacht? Watch your tone, Thomas finally spoke, though he still wouldn't meet my eyes. Mother knows what's best for the hotel. I studied my husband of 8 years, wondering when he turned into the spineless echo of his mother's will. Probably around the same time Eleanor had threatened to cut off his trust fund if he didn't support her plans. The hotel needs modernization, Eleanor declared. New management, new vision. We're already in talks with Luxury Resorts International for a potential sale. And there it was, her real plan. She wanted to sell the historic property to developers who would tear it down and build another Solis resort tower. The same developers who'd been sending her lavish consulting fees for months, according to the financial records I've been quietly gathering. Sarah, Eleanor's voice dripped with false sympathy. I know this must be difficult. But really, did you think a former housekeeper could run a property of this caliber forever? The board needs someone with proper breeding. I thought about the real board meeting that had occurred this morning. The one Eleanor didn't know about, held via secure video conference with the majority of shareholders she didn't realize existed. It's interesting you mentioned the board, I said, taking a sip of water. Tell me which board members voted for this change. All of them, of course. It was unanimous. Really? Because I spoke to Harrison Pierce this morning, and Maria Chen, and Judge Roberts. They all send their regards. Eleanor's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her wine glass. Those 3 names, her most reliable board allies, were supposed to have attended a private meeting with her today. A meeting that never happened because they were all at their real board meeting with me. You're bluffing, she said, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. They signed the documents. Did they? Or did someone else sign for them? I pulled out my phone, showing her a text from Harrison Pierce. Documents forged. Proceeding as planned. The color drained from Eleanor's expertly made-up face. What have you done? Thomas demanded, finally looking at me directly. Me? I've just been doing my job. Running the hotel, maintaining security, keeping records. I smiled. Very detailed records. Security? Eleanor's voice had risen an octave. What security? The new system we installed last year, remember? You approved the budget for it personally. High-definition cameras, state-of-the-art microphones, all feeding into a secure cloud server. They cover every inch of the hotel, including your private office, Eleanor. Now Thomas looked worried too. He should be. Those cameras had captured plenty of interesting conversations between mother and son over the past year. You can't? That's illegal. Eleanor sputtered. Actually, it's not. The hotel security policy, which you signed, allows for comprehensive monitoring of all hotel spaces for safety and security purposes, including offices used for hotel business. I stood up, smoothing my dress. Would you like to know what those cameras recorded? The meetings with developers about kickbacks, the conversations about forging board signatures, or maybe your discussion last week about falsifying the hotel's financial records? Eleanor's face had turned an interesting shade of gray. You're lying. Those recordings don't exist. My lawyers received copies this morning. along with documentation of every illegal transaction you've conducted using hotel resources over the past 5 years. I turned to Thomas, including that interesting chat you had with Mother about using hotel funds to cover your gambling debts. You bit. Thomas started to rise, but Eleanor's hand shot out, gripping his arm. Wait, she commanded, her socialite facade cracking. What do you want? What did I want? I thought about my first day at the Riverview Grand 15 years ago. A 22-year-old immigrant with a degree in hotel management, taking a housekeeping job because no one would give me a management position without proper connections. I remembered Eleanor's dismissive glances, Thomas's condescending flirtations that somehow turned into marriage, and 6 years of proving myself while being treated like an interloper. Originally, I said quietly, I wanted respect, recognition for turning this hotel around, but you made it clear that would never happen. So instead, I'll take ownership. Ownership? Thomas laughed nervously. The family trust controls the majority shares. Check again, I suggested. Your gambling debts weren't the only thing I discovered, Thomas. Those emergency withdrawals from the trust to cover your losses, they violated the trust's terms. As of this morning, those shares have been redistributed according to the trust's dissolution clause. Eleanor's wine glass shattered on the floor. That's impossible. I control the trust. You did. Until the trustees saw evidence of your financial misconduct. Apparently, they take a dim view of embezzlement and fraud. I picked up my purse, preparing to leave them with one final revelation. Oh, and those shares you thought you controlled? Check the ownership records. For the past year, I've been quietly buying them through a holding company. As of today, I own 60% of the Riverview Grand. You can't prove any of this, Eleanor hissed, but fear had replaced the contempt in her eyes. Actually, I can prove all of it. And tomorrow morning, when the real board meets to review the evidence, you'll both be removed from hotel operations permanently. I headed for the door, then paused. I suggest you use tonight to pack up your offices. Security will arrive at 9 a.m. sharp. As I walked through the hotel's elegant lobby, my heels clicking on the marble floors that I'd once polished as a housekeeper, I pulled out my phone and sent a pre-prepared message. Proceed with phase 2. Tomorrow would be interesting, but tonight I had preparations to make. After all, taking control was just the first step. Keeping it would require everything I'd learned in 15 years of watching, waiting, and building my case piece by piece. At exactly 8:59 a.m. the next morning, I stood in the Riverview Grand's executive suite, watching the security feeds on my laptop. Right on schedule, Eleanor and Thomas arrived in the lobby, heads held high, probably expecting this to be a minor inconvenience before their lawyers sorted everything out. What they didn't expect was the team of forensic accountants already working in the financial office or the FBI agents waiting by the elevators. Mrs. Barrett? Agent Martinez approached Eleanor. We have some questions about certain international wire transfers made from hotel accounts. I watched Eleanor's perfect composure crack. I need to speak with my lawyer. Of course, Martinez smiled. They can meet us at our office. We have a warrant to seize all financial records and electronic devices. Thomas tried to slip away toward the service elevator, but another agent intercepted him. Mr. Barrett, we'd like to discuss some interesting credit card charges at various casinos. Charges that match missing amounts from hotel renovation funds. My phone buzzed. Maria Chen. I took one last look at the security feed, watching Eleanor and Thomas being escorted out. Then I straightened my jacket and headed to the boardroom where the real power shift would occur. The Riverview Grand's boardroom had always been Eleanor's domain. Her carefully chosen artwork, her preferred leather chairs, her family photos arranged to remind everyone of the Barrett legacy. But today, new faces filled those chairs, shareholders who'd been silently supporting me for months. Good morning, I began, taking my place at the head of the table. I believe we all know why we're here. Harrison Pierce, our longest-serving board member, spoke first. The evidence you've provided is disturbing. Forged signatures, embezzled funds, kickbacks from developers. How long has this been going on? At least 5 years, I replied, distributing tablets containing my complete documentation. Since Eleanor first tried to sell the hotel to Luxury Resorts International. When that failed, she began looking for other ways to force a sale. And your husband? Maria Chen asked gently. He was involved. Thomas helped cover up his mother's activities in exchange for her paying off his gambling debts. The cameras caught several explicit conversations about their arrangement. Judge Roberts, who'd served on the board since the hotel's founding, shook his head sadly. I knew Gerald Barrett. He built this hotel from nothing, made it a landmark. To see his wife and son destroy his legacy like this. They haven't destroyed it yet, I said firmly. That's why we're here. For the next 2 hours, we reviewed my plans for the hotel's future, not just securing its financial stability, but expanding while preserving its historic character. New restaurants featuring local chefs, a restored ballroom that had been Eleanor's storage space for her designer wardrobe. Partnerships with Miami's arts community. This is impressive, Harrison said finally. But Eleanor won't go quietly. She still has connections, influence. I'm counting on that, I smiled. Check page 47 of your reports. They turned to the page, and a collective gasp filled the room. There, in meticulous detail, was evidence of Eleanor's other activities. Tax evasion schemes, manipulated property values, bribes to city officials. All documented through years of security footage and financial records. She's not just facing hotel management issues, I explained. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit has been building a case for months. They just needed probable cause for a warrant, which her attempt to forge board signatures provided. Maria leaned forward. You've been planning this for years, haven't you? Since the day Eleanor told me a mere housekeeper would never truly be part of the Barrett family. She was right. I became something better. I became someone who could protect Gerald Barrett's real legacy. The vote was unanimous. I was confirmed as CEO and majority owner of the Riverview Grand Hotel. My first official act was to cancel all discussions with development companies about selling the property. By evening, the news had spread through Miami's business community. Eleanor and Thomas had been released on bail, but the evidence against them was overwhelming. Their lawyers were already floating plea deal possibilities. I was in Gerald Barrett's old office, my office now, when Janet, my assistant, buzzed me. Mrs. Eleanor Barrett is here. She's insisting. Send her in. Eleanor entered, her designer outfit slightly disheveled. Her usual confident stride reduced to a nervous shuffle. Sarah, we need to talk. About what? The forged documents, the embezzled funds, or the fact that you and Thomas were planning to blame it all on me if anyone started asking questions. She flinched. Another revelation caught on camera. I can help you, she said quickly. I have connections, influence. We can work something out. Like you worked something out with the developers or the city officials you bribed? You don't understand, her voice cracked. This hotel, it's all I have. No, Eleanor. The hotel was something you had, but you saw it as nothing more than a property to exploit. I see it as Gerald Barrett saw it, as a legacy worth protecting. Gerald? She sank into a chair. What do you know about Gerald? I opened my desk drawer and pulled out an old photograph. It showed a young Gerald Barrett standing in front of the newly opened hotel, pride shining in his eyes. Beside him was a woman in a housekeeping uniform, his mother. Did you know Gerald's mother was a housekeeper? I asked quietly. That he worked as a bellhop to put himself through school. He never forgot where he came from. That's why he always treated every employee with respect. Eleanor stared at the photo, her carefully maintained facade crumbling. He never told me. Because you never asked. You were too busy trying to turn his dream into a commodity to be sold. Security appeared at my door. I texted Janet when Eleanor entered. Mrs. Barrett needs to leave, I told them. Please ensure she doesn't remove anything from the property. As they let her out, she turned back. What will you do with the hotel? I'll run it, like Gerald would have wanted, with respect for its history and the people who make it work. After she was gone, I walked through the hotel's elegant halls, greeting staff members by name, people who'd worked alongside me when I was just another housekeeper with dreams. They smiled back, pride and hope replacing the fear that had dominated during Eleanor's reign. In the grand lobby, I paused by the massive portrait of Gerald Barrett that dominated one wall. Someone, Eleanor probably, had added a plaque beneath it reading, "The Barrett Family Legacy." Janet, I called to my assistant. Have a new plaque made. This one should read, "Every dream starts somewhere." Over the next year, the Riverview Grand flourished. The restored ballroom became Miami's most sought-after event venue. Our new farm-to-table restaurant earned 2 Michelin stars. Most importantly, we established a scholarship program for hotel employees pursuing degrees in hospitality management. Thomas eventually took a plea deal, agreeing to testify against his mother in exchange for a lighter sentence. Eleanor faced substantial prison time for financial fraud and tax evasion. The society pages buzzed about the scandal for months. But I was too busy running a successful hotel to care. Every morning, I still walk through the hotel's service areas first, greeting the housekeeping staff as they prepare for another day. Some of them are students working their way through school like I did. They all know my story now. It's become part of the hotel's lore. Remember, I tell each new employee during orientation, Gerald Barrett believed everyone deserves a chance to rise. All you need is determination, integrity, and patience. And maybe, I add with a smile, a really good security system.